Picture standing on the edge of the Sahara Desert today, endless waves of golden sand stretching as far as the eye can see. A landscape so harsh and dry, it feels almost otherworldly. But what if I told you this wasn't always the case? Rewind the clock just a few thousand years, and you'd find yourself in a completely different world. A Sahara bursting with life, where rivers carved through lush valleys, where giraffes and elephants roamed beneath towering trees, and where early human civilizations thrived in what was once a verdant paradise. This isn't science fiction, it's a reality buried beneath the sands of time, waiting to be uncovered. How does a land so rich and alive become one of the most extreme deserts on Earth? The story of the Sahara's transformation is one of the most dramatic environmental mysteries of our planet's history. It's a tale of shifting climates, ancient civilizations, and forces of nature so powerful they reshaped an entire region. From the slow dance of Earth's orbit to the fingerprints left behind by early humans, the clues are scattered across the desert, hidden in fossilized pollen, ancient cave paintings, and even the sediments of long-vanished lakes. This video is your ticket to unraveling that mystery. Together, we'll piece together the evidence, exploring how tiny changes in sunlight and rainfall could tip an entire ecosystem into collapse, how archaeologists are uncovering the lost worlds buried beneath the dunes, and what this all means for our understanding of climate change today. By the time we're done, you'll see the Sahara in a whole new light, not just as a desert, but as a living record of Earth's incredible ability to transform. So let's step into the past and discover how this land of extremes came to be. The journey begins now. To understand how the Sahara could support such vibrant life, we need to look beyond the desert we see today and into the mechanics of our planet's climate. The secret lies in something called orbital, forcing the subtle wobbles and tilts in Earth's rotation that, over thousands of years, alter how sunlight reaches different parts of the globe. Around 11,000 years ago, a slight shift in Earth's tilt caused the northern hemisphere to receive more direct sunlight during summer months. This might sound like a minor detail, but that extra warmth supercharged the African monsoon system, pulling moisture-laden winds deep into what's now the Sahara. Rain fell in abundance, filling ancient lake beds, nourishing vast grasslands, and creating a network of rivers that crisscrossed the region. The evidence for this lush past isn't just theoretical. In the Tassili Ennaja Mountains of Algeria, cave paintings depict giraffes, crocodiles, and even humans swimming, scenes unimaginable in today's parched landscape. Fossilized pollen tells us acacia trees and flowering plants once thrived here, while sediment cores from long-dried lakes reveal layers of organic material, proof of thriving aquatic ecosystems. Even more striking, archaeologists have uncovered the remains of fishing villages hundreds of miles from the nearest modern water source, a haunting reminder of how dramatically this land has changed. But why did it end? The same orbital forces that brought the rains began to reverse. As Earth's tilt gradually shifted back over millennia, the monsoons weakened and the Sahara's lifeline faded. Lakes evaporated, rivers disappeared, and the lush vegetation gave way to encroaching sand. This wasn't an overnight catastrophe. It unfolded over centuries, pushing both wildlife and human societies to adapt or retreat. Some followed the dwindling water south, while others developed new ways to survive in the hardening landscape. The Sahara's transformation is a powerful testament to how delicate the balance between abundance and desolation can be, and a reminder that even the mightiest ecosystems are shaped by forces far beyond their borders. What's truly fascinating is how this ancient cycle might hold clues to our future. The Sahara's story isn't just about the past. It's a case study in how small climatic changes can cascade into environmental upheaval. As we grapple with modern climate shifts, the lessons of the Green Sahara remind us that the boundaries between fertile and barren are never as fixed as they seem. The Sahara's dramatic shifts between lush greenery and barren desert aren't random. They're written into the very rhythm of our planet's movement through space. These changes hinge on what scientists call Milankovitch cycles, a series of slow, celestial dances that alter Earth's position relative to the Sun over tens of thousands of years. Think of it like this: Earth doesn't spin perfectly still like a top. Instead, it wobbles slightly on its axis, its orbit stretches and contracts, and the angle of its tilt subtly shifts, all of these movements changing how sunlight touches different parts of the globe. Around 11,000 years ago, one of these cycles tilted the northern hemisphere just a bit more toward the sun during summer months. That small adjustment was enough to supercharge the African monsoon, pulling dense, rain-heavy winds much farther north than they travel today. Where sand dunes now stand, seasonal downpours filled vast lakes like the legendary Mega-Chad, a body of water so large it rivaled the Caspian Sea in size. Grasslands stretched for hundreds of miles, dotted with trees and crisscrossed by rivers that supported not just wildlife but thriving human communities. But here's where the story takes a turn. Milankovitch cycles are never static. They're a planetary pendulum, always in motion. As Earth's tilt gradually returned to its previous angle, the monsoons weakened, retreating southward like a receding tide. Rainfall became sporadic, then scarce. Lakes evaporated into salt flats, rivers vanished into the sands, and the once green Sahara began its long, inexorable march toward aridity. This wasn't a sudden catastrophe, but a slow-motion transformation unfolding over generations. Early pastoralists who relied on the land's bounty would have witnessed the change in real time, watching grasslands wither, water sources disappear, and the desert advance season by season. What's remarkable is how predictable this cycle has been. Geological records show the Sahara has oscillated between wet and dry phases like clockwork, greening and browning roughly every 20,000 years in lockstep with Earth's orbital shifts. But this time, something's different. Human activity, from deforestation to greenhouse gas emissions, is altering the climate at a pace that outstrips these ancient natural rhythms. While the Sahara's past teaches us about the power of planetary forces, it also serves as a cautionary tale. When small environmental shifts can tip entire regions from paradise to wasteland, it begs the question: how will the combined pressure of natural cycles and human influence reshape the world in centuries to come? The artifacts buried beneath the Sahara's sands are more than just relics. They're fragments of a lost world, whispering stories of human ingenuity in the face of a changing planet. Take the discovery of Gobero in Niger, where archaeologists unearthed a sprawling graveyard dating back nearly 10,000 years. Among the dunes, they found not just skeletons, but harpoons carved from bone, pottery adorned with intricate patterns, and even the remains of fish as large as a person. These weren't just survival tools, they were the hallmarks of a vibrant culture that thrived along the shores of a vanished lake, fishing in waters that have long since turned to dust. Elsewhere, in Libya's Tadrot Akakos Mountains, cave paintings reveal scenes of cattle herding and hunting activities unthinkable in today's hyper-arid landscape. The images are so vivid they almost seem to move. Antelope leaping, archers drawing their bows, herds of livestock grazing beneath what must have been a canopy of green. But perhaps most telling are the layers of abandonment. At sites like Nabta Playa in Egypt, settlements stacked with grinding stones and storage pits show signs of sudden departure. Pots left half-finished, tools discarded mid-task, as if the people who lived here packed up in haste, chasing the receding water southward. What makes these discoveries so compelling isn't just proof that humans lived here, it's how they adapted. When the rains began to fail, some communities shifted from farming to nomadic herding, following seasonal grasses. Others dug deeper wells or forged trade networks to survive. But as the desert expanded, even these strategies reached their limits. The artifacts left behind, a child's toy near a dry riverbed, a necklace of cowrie shells far from any coast, speak to the heartbreaking choices these people faced: stay and struggle or leave everything behind. The Sahara's ancient settlements aren't just a lesson in climate change, they're a mirror. Today, as rising temperatures and droughts displace communities worldwide, these echoes from the past remind us that environmental upheaval isn't new, but the scale of our current crisis is. Unlike those Neolithic societies, we understand the forces at work. The question is whether we'll heed their story in time. High on the sun-baked cliffs of the Sahara, time has preserved a gallery unlike any other, where the walls themselves tell stories in ochre and charcoal. These ancient canvases showcase herds of elephants wading through marshes, giraffes nibbling at treetops, and cattle grazing on plains so lush they could rival the Serengeti. But the most striking detail isn't just what's painted, it's what's missing. There's not a single grain of sand in these scenes, no hint of the barren expanse we see today. Instead, they capture a snapshot of life as it was, frozen in stone by artists who witnessed the Sahara's transformation firsthand. Take the Tassili Ennaja Plateau in Algeria, where over 15,000 individual paintings span millennia of human history. The oldest layers depict wildlife in astonishing detail: hippos submerged in rivers, crocodiles basking on shores, proof that water was once abundant here. Later artworks show domesticated cattle, their horns curved like crescent moons, tended by figures with elaborate headdresses. But as you move through the chronological layers, the palette itself seems to dry up. Vibrant greens and blues give way to dustier tones, and the animals grow fewer, replaced by scenes of archers hunting sparse game. It's as if the artists were chronicling their world's slow evaporation, stroke by stroke. Who were these painters? They left no written records, but their art speaks volumes. Some scholars believe they were part of the so-called round-head culture, named for the distinctive human figures they depicted with circular faces and outstretched arms, perhaps mid-ritual or dance. Others suggest these sites were communal spaces where generations returned to add their stories to the rock, creating a layered testament to resilience. What's undeniable is their acute awareness of change. In one haunting panel, a herd of cattle is painted over earlier images of wildlife, as if marking the shift from hunting to herding as the landscape grew harsher. The true power of these artworks lies in their intimacy. Unlike fossils or sediment cores, which tell us about climates and ecosystems, these paintings reveal how people felt about the world transforming around them. A giraffe rendered with delicate spots isn't just a record of fauna, it's someone's memory of a creature they might never see again in their homeland. A handprint pressed beside a fading herd could be a final farewell, a way to say, "We were here." Today, these fragile masterpieces face new threats. Wind erosion scours their surfaces, while looters and careless tourists chip away at their edges. Yet, even as the pigments fade, their message grows louder. In a time when we document every moment with cameras and satellites, these ancient artists remind us that bearing witness isn't just about recording facts, it's about preserving the soul of a place. Their brushes didn't just paint animals, they painted time itself, leaving us a roadmap of adaptation and loss that feels achingly relevant today. As the Sahara's lakes vanished and its rivers retreated, one waterway stood defiant against the encroaching desert, the Nile. Unlike the seasonal streams that once crisscrossed the Sahara, the Nile's rhythm was relentless, fed by distant rains in the Ethiopian highlands and equatorial Africa. Every summer, like clockwork, its banks would swell, depositing a layer of rich, black silt across the floodplain. This wasn't just water, it was liquid fertility, a gift that turned the Nile's shores into a narrow ribbon of green amidst a sea of sand. And along this ribbon, something extraordinary took root: the civilization of ancient Egypt, a culture that would flourish for thousands of years, all thanks to the river's unwavering generosity. But here's the twist: Egypt's rise might owe as much to the Sahara's collapse as it does to the Nile's bounty. As the desert expanded, people and animals were funneled toward the river's banks, compressing diverse societies into a densely populated corridor. The Nile became a magnet for innovation, where ideas and technologies from across the shrinking Green Sahara collided. The same droughts that emptied the desert's lakes may have supercharged the Nile's floods, as shifting weather patterns sent more rainfall into its headwaters. Suddenly, the river wasn't just a refuge, it was an agricultural powerhouse capable of supporting surplus crops, and in turn, the artisans, priests, and pharaohs who built pyramids and penned hieroglyphs. Archaeologists see this transition etched into the land itself. In the desert west of the Nile, stone tools and pottery shards mark abandoned settlements, evidence of communities that once thrived far from the river but were forced to retreat. Meanwhile, along the Nile, villages ballooned into cities. The invention of basin irrigation, a system of canals and dikes to trap floodwaters, turned the river's seasonal gifts into year-round abundance. It's no coincidence that the first unified Egyptian kingdom emerged around 5,000 years ago, just as the Sahara's drying reached its peak. The very forces that strangled one landscape may have fertilized another. Yet the Nile story isn't just about geography, it's about human ingenuity under pressure. Faced with a changing climate, early Egyptians didn't just survive, they engineered solutions. They studied the stars to predict floods, designed ships to trade along the river's length, and stored grain against lean years. Their calendar, their gods, even their concept of the afterlife revolved around the Nile's cycles. In a way, the Sahara's retreat didn't just give Egypt a river, it gave it a mission: to master the forces of nature. This dance between environmental upheaval and cultural brilliance raises a provocative question. Would Egypt have become a superpower without the Sahara's decline? It's impossible to say for certain, but the timing is striking. The desert's transformation didn't just create a vacuum, it created a crucible concentrating people, resources, and ambition along a single, life-giving artery. Today, as modern nations grapple with rising seas and shifting rainfall, the lesson rings clear: sometimes the greatest civilizations aren't born in paradise, but at the edge of what's possible, where necessity breeds invention. The Nile didn't just carry water, it carried the future. The Sahara's lost world wasn't just a paradise for early humans, it was a haven for giants. Imagine herds of African buffalo the size of small cars, elephants with tusks curving like crescent moons, and even species now extinct like the massive North African aurochs. These creatures thrived in the Green Sahara's wetlands and savannas, their fossils telling a story of abundance that seems impossible when you look at the desert today. But around 5,000 years ago, as the lakes dried and the sands advanced, something dramatic happened. The megafauna began disappearing, not all at once, but in waves that left scientists puzzling over what tipped the balance. Was it the changing climate that doomed these giants, or did human hunters deliver the final blow? The debate cuts to the heart of how ecosystems collapse. On one side, sediment cores show vegetation shrinking in lockstep with orbital shifts, suggesting the Sahara simply ran out of food and water for large herbivores. But dig deeper and you'll find clues pointing to human influence. At Garbero, the same archaeological site that revealed ancient fishing spears also yielded harpoons embedded in hippo bones. Cave paintings depict hunting scenes with startling precision, showing spears flying toward giraffes and antelope. Then there's the timing. Many species vanished just as pastoralists began spreading across the region with domesticated cattle, competing for dwindling grasslands. This isn't just ancient history, it's a mirror for today's extinction crises. The parallels are uncanny. Just as the Sahara's giants faced a shifting climate and human pressure, modern elephants and rhinos now grapple with habitat loss and poaching. But there's a crucial difference. While our ancestors likely accelerated extinctions without understanding the consequences, we now have the science to see these patterns unfolding in real time. The Sahara's fossil record serves as both a warning and a lesson. Ecosystems are fragile tapestries, and once certain threads, like keystone species, are pulled out, the entire fabric can unravel in ways no one could predict. What makes the Sahara's megafauna vanishing so haunting is how selective they were. Species that could adapt survived. The African elephant persisted by migrating south, while others like the scimitar-horned oryx clung to isolated oases before disappearing from the region entirely. But some losses remain mysteries. Take the Nile crocodiles that once basked in Saharan lakes. How did populations in landlocked Chad differ genetically from their river-dwelling cousins? Recent DNA studies suggest these isolated groups held unique adaptations, now lost forever. Each fossil tells us not just about what died, but about the intricate web of life that once turned this desert into a theater of giants. Perhaps the most profound takeaway isn't about assigning blame, but recognizing interconnectedness. The Green Sahara didn't just feed animals, it was shaped by them. Elephants knocked over trees, creating clearings that encouraged grass growth. Hippos churned up riverbeds, keeping waterways clear. When these ecosystem engineers disappeared, the landscape itself changed. Today, as scientists debate rewilding projects to restore lost balances, the Sahara's ghostly megafauna remind us that every extinction isn't just a loss of species, it's the erasure of an entire world's potential. Their bones whisper a question we're still grappling with. How much can an ecosystem change before it becomes something irreversibly new? Today's Sahara might seem barren, but it's far from silent every year. It sends colossal plumes of dust swirling into the sky, a force so powerful it crosses oceans. These storms carry millions of tons of mineral-rich particles, some landing as far away as the Amazon rainforest, where they replenish nutrients in soils worn thin by relentless tropical rains. It's a planetary exchange program we rarely think about, the desert's dust feeding the world's largest jungle. But rewind to the Green Sahara era, when lakes and grasslands anchored the landscape, and this dust machine ground nearly to a halt. With vegetation holding the soil in place, fewer particles took flight, potentially altering weather patterns across the globe in ways we're only beginning to understand. Scientists piecing together this puzzle have uncovered something startling. Less Saharan dust during wet periods may have supercharged Atlantic hurricanes by allowing more sunlight to warm the ocean's surface. Think of dust as Earth's natural sunscreen. When it's thick in the atmosphere, it reflects solar radiation back into space, cooling the waters below. But when the Sahara was green, clearer skies could have heated the Atlantic, fueling stronger storms. Sediment cores from the ocean floor tell the tale. Layers with fewer dust particles coincide with evidence of intense hurricane activity. It's a humbling reminder that a change in one corner of the planet can ripple outward, turning local climate shifts into global phenomena. The implications don't stop there. That same dust also carries iron, a micronutrient that fertilizes phytoplankton blooms in the Atlantic. These tiny marine plants absorb carbon dioxide, effectively pulling greenhouse gases from the atmosphere. During the Green Sahara, with less dust seeding the ocean, this natural carbon sink might have weakened, subtly nudging Earth's climate. It's a feedback loop as intricate as it is powerful, where deserts, oceans, and skies are threads in the same vast tapestry. What does this mean for our future? As climate change reshapes rainfall patterns, some models suggest parts of the Sahara could green again, reducing dust emissions. If history is any guide, the consequences would be far-reaching, potentially stronger hurricanes, shifts in marine ecosystems, even changes in air quality continents away. But here's the twist: humans are now part of the equation. Industrial activity and land use already alter dust production, adding layers of complexity to these ancient cycles. The Sahara's dust isn't just a relic of the past, it's a live wire in the climate system, and understanding its rhythms might help us anticipate the storms, literal and metaphorical, on the horizon. One thing is certain: the Sahara's influence stretches far beyond its dunes. From the rainforest's thirst for minerals to the hurricane's dance with sunlight, this desert reminds us that no landscape exists in isolation. The next time you see a hazy sunset painted with distant dust, remember, you're witnessing a conversation between continents, written on the wind. The idea that the Sahara's transformation from lush paradise to barren desert could have happened in mere centuries, not millennia, challenges everything we thought we knew about Earth's rhythms. Picture this: a landscape so stable for generations that families could fish the same lakes their ancestors did, only to watch those waters vanish within a lifetime. This radical theory hinges on something called vegetation-climate feedback loops, a domino effect where dying plants trigger faster drying, which kills more plants, and so on. It starts with something as simple as a few bad droughts. Trees stressed by lack of water shed leaves, exposing soil to blistering sun. With fewer roots to hold it together, topsoil blows away, and without plants transpiring moisture back into the air, local rainfall dwindles. What begins as a slow decline suddenly tips into freefall, like a glass overflowing after one last drop. Evidence for this abrupt shift comes from surprising places. Sediment cores drilled from ancient lakebeds show layers of pollen-rich mud abruptly capped by sterile dust. No gradual transition, just a stark before and after. Then there's the curious case of the Saharan pump. Around 5,000 years ago, archaeological sites across North Africa reveal a sudden exodus of people and animals southward, as if fleeing an invisible tide. Tools and pottery styles change rapidly in regions like the Sahel, suggesting waves of migration compressed into generations, not centuries. Even more telling, the chemistry of ocean sediments off West Africa, where layers of wind-blown dust spike dramatically in a geological blink, signaling the desert's explosive expansion. What makes this theory so urgent today is its warning about thresholds. Modern climate models suggest similar feedback loops could be activated in places like the Amazon, where deforestation reduces rainfall, which kills more trees, potentially flipping entire regions from rainforest to savanna. The Sahara's past shows us that ecosystems don't always decline gently. They can snap like a stretched rubber band. Right now, the Sahel region south of the Sahara is greening slightly due to increased monsoon rains, but some scientists worry this could reverse if global temperatures push the system past a hidden breaking point. The terrifying lesson: by the time we notice the tipping point, it may already be behind us. Yet there's a twist in this story. While the Sahara's southern edge did advance rapidly, its core might have dried more slowly, creating a patchwork of change. Satellite imagery reveals ancient river channels buried under dunes, some abandoned suddenly, others shrinking incrementally. This mosaic pattern suggests that even within a rapid collapse, nature resists simplicity. Perhaps the truth lies somewhere between catastrophe and gradual shift, with human memory compressing the timeline. After all, if your grandparents' village vanished under dunes within your lifetime, wouldn't it feel like an overnight catastrophe, no matter what the geology says? The real power of this research isn't just rewriting the Sahara's history, it's reframing our future. If civilizations once thrived here unaware they were living on borrowed time, what invisible thresholds are we approaching today? From melting permafrost releasing stored carbon to dying coral reefs altering ocean currents, the Sahara's story teaches us that climate isn't a dial we can turn slowly back. It's a switch that can flip without warning. And once it does, the new state, like today's vast desert, might persist for thousands of years, reshaping not just landscapes, but the destiny of everything that depends on them. The lush grasses of the Green Sahara didn't just feed elephants and antelope, they sustained human communities for thousands of years, particularly the nomadic herders who followed the rains with their cattle, sheep, and goats. These early pastoralists left behind more than just bones and tools. They left a provocative question etched into the landscape. Did their way of life inadvertently speed up the desert's advance? It's a debate that pits necessity against consequence, where survival strategies in a changing climate might have tipped an already fragile ecosystem past the point of no return. Take the archaeological record at sites like Adra Buz in Niger, where layers of soil tell a story of transformation. In the deepest layers, pollen samples show a mix of grasses and shrubs, typical savanna vegetation. But as you move upward through time, something shifts. The variety of plant species narrows, replaced by hardy, drought-resistant varieties, while the soil itself becomes looser, more prone to erosion. At the same level, scientists find something else, an explosion of cattle bones and the distinctive rounded hoof prints of domesticated livestock preserved in ancient mud. The timing is suspicious. Just as the climate was becoming drier, human communities were intensifying their reliance on grazing animals, potentially stripping away the very vegetation that held the land together. But blaming pastoralists outright misses the nuance. These weren't careless exploiters, they were adapters responding to a world in flux. As lakes shrank and grasslands retreated, concentrating herds around remaining water sources would have been a logical survival tactic. The problem wasn't the animals themselves, it was the scale. Modern studies of overgrazing show how repeated cropping of grasses weakens their root systems, leaving soil vulnerable to wind erosion. Once that process starts, it creates a feedback loop. Less vegetation means less moisture retained in the ground, which means fewer new plants can grow. In the Sahara's case, this might have amplified the effects of natural drying, turning a gradual climate shift into a runaway ecological train. The evidence isn't just in the dirt, it's in the art. Later cave paintings in the Tassili Anaja region depict scenes of cattle with exaggerated, almost skeletal features, their ribs visible beneath thin hides. Some researchers interpret these as signs of stressed herds struggling in worsening conditions. Other artworks show armed clashes between groups, hinting at conflicts over dwindling resources. These aren't just illustrations, they're distress signals from a society caught between a changing climate and their own survival instincts. Yet here's the twist: some pastoral practices might have delayed the desert's spread. In certain regions, the nutrient-rich dung of grazing animals could have fertilized soils, while their hoof prints might have helped trap water and seeds. It's a reminder that human impact isn't monolithic. It's a spectrum where the same activity can harm or help depending on context. The real lesson of the Sahara's herders isn't about assigning blame, but about recognizing how thin the line between adaptation and unintended consequence can be. Today, as modern agriculture and urbanization reshape landscapes at an unprecedented pace, their story echoes louder than ever. When the very practices that keep us alive also erode the foundations of our survival, how do we rewrite the script? The Sahara's silent sands hold no easy answers, only a warning written in dust and bone. Lake Mega Chad wasn't just a body of water. It was a shimmering, life-giving empire stretching across an area larger than modern-day Germany. At its peak around 7,000 years ago, its shores teemed with hippos and crocodiles, while its vast surface reflected the sky like a second sun. Today, all that remains is a ghostly echo, Lake Chad, a shallow remnant just 5% of its ancestors' size. The story of this vanishing act isn't just about climate change. It's a masterclass in how water shapes civilizations and what happens when it disappears. The scale of Mega Chad's retreat is written in the land itself. Satellite images reveal ancient shorelines carved into the desert like bathtub rings, marking where waves once lapped hundreds of miles farther inland. Beneath today's dunes, sonar surveys have mapped submerged river valleys and drowned dunes, proof that this wasn't just a lake, but an inland sea with its own weather systems. Fishermen's nets still occasionally haul up relics from its depths, stone tools, pottery, even the occasional hippo skull, all preserved in the mud like messages from a forgotten world. So what drained this aquatic giant? The answer lies in a perfect storm of natural shifts. As Earth's orbit nudged the African monsoon southward, rainfall patterns shifted, starving Mega Chad of its lifeline. But here's where it gets fascinating. The lake didn't just evaporate evenly like a puddle in the sun. Instead, it died by 1,000 cuts. Rivers that once fed it changed course, diverted by subtle tilts in the landscape. Sand dunes advanced like slow-moving walls, splitting the lake into smaller, doomed fragments. Even the lake's own vastness worked against it. As it shrank, its surface area decreased, reducing evaporation and ironically speeding its demise. The human cost of this retreat is etched into the archaeological record. Along Mega Chad's former shores, settlements show signs of sudden abandonment, half-finished fish traps, granaries left full. But some communities adapted ingeniously. The Sao people, who thrived here 2,000 years ago, built raised settlements on mounds to stay above the encroaching sands, their pottery decorated with fish motifs long after the waters receded. These weren't just survivors, they were archivists, preserving the memory of a wetter world in their art and oral traditions. Modern Lake Chad's struggle mirrors its ancestors, but with a troubling twist. While climate change plays a role, overuse of water for irrigation and population growth have accelerated the crisis. Where Mega Chad took millennia to shrink, its descendant has lost 90% of its volume in just 60 years, a blink in geological time. The consequences ripple across borders. Fishermen and farmers compete for dwindling resources, while the drying lakebed fuels dust storms that choke cities thousands of miles away. Yet hope isn't lost. Hydrologists studying Mega Chad's ancient cycles have uncovered a surprising resilience. Core samples show the lake has expanded and contracted multiple times over the ages, suggesting that with careful management, recovery might be possible. Projects like the proposed Transaqua Canal, which would divert water from the Congo Basin, are controversial, but they prove we're no longer passive observers of these changes. The lesson of Mega Chad is clear: water shapes destiny, but only if we learn to read the tides of time. Deep beneath the shifting sands of the Sahara lie whispers of forgotten cities, some the stuff of legend, others very real. Take the Garamantes, a civilization that flourished in what's now Libya around 2,000 years ago. While their neighbors saw only a wasteland, the Garamantes looked underground, carving a labyrinth of tunnels and wells known as fagaras to tap into ancient aquifers. These weren't just ditches, they were feats of hydraulic engineering, some stretching for miles, delivering water to arid fields where crops like dates and barley thrived. Their capital, Garama, boasted multi-story buildings and bustling markets, a testament to human ingenuity in the face of a drying world. Yet the Garamantes' story isn't just about survival, it's about the limits of adaptation. As their population grew, so did their thirst, and the aquifers couldn't recharge fast enough. Slowly, the wells ran dry, the crops withered, and the desert reclaimed their oasis. But here's the twist, their decline wasn't sudden. Archaeologists find evidence of generations struggling to maintain the fagaras, digging deeper, tunneling farther, a slow-motion race against an inevitable reckoning. By the time Roman historians took note of them, the Garamantes were already ghosts of their former selves, their once great canals filling with wind-blown sand. Then there's the enigma of Janay Geno in modern Mali, a city that thrived for over 16 centuries thanks to the Niger River's seasonal floods. Unlike the Garamantes, Janay Geno's people didn't fight the water, they danced with it, building their homes on mounds to stay above the floods. Their terracotta figurines and iron tools reveal a society rich in art and industry, trading gold and salt across the Sahara. But as the desert expanded, the floods grew unpredictable and the trade routes shifted. Janay Geno didn't collapse, it simply faded, its people dispersing to new hubs like Timbuktu, leaving behind a skeleton of mud brick walls. The Sahara's lost cities challenge our assumptions about civilization and environment. They weren't wiped out by war or plague, but by something far more insidious, the slow creep of change. The Garamantes dug deeper, the people of Janay Geno built higher, but in the end, the desert always had the final word. Their ruins stand as monuments to a hard truth, that even the most brilliant adaptations are temporary when the world beneath your feet is turning to dust. Yet perhaps their greatest legacy isn't in their downfall, but in their resilience. The fagaras inspired later irrigation systems across North Africa, while Janay Geno's mound-building techniques still inform architecture in flood-prone regions today. These societies didn't just vanish, they left blueprints for survival in an unpredictable world. As modern cities from Phoenix to Cape Town grapple with water scarcity, the Sahara's ancient urbanites whisper a question across the centuries. When the next drought comes, will we be wiser than they were? To uncover the Sahara's hidden history, scientists don't rely on guesswork, they turn to nature's own record keepers. Take tree rings, those concentric circles hidden within ancient wood. In the few places where trees still cling to life at the desert's edge, their rings tell a story of feast and famine. Wide bands signal years of abundant rain, while narrow, cramped lines whisper of droughts that stretched for decades. But here's the astonishing part. Some of these trees are centuries old, their rings overlapping like pages in a diary, creating a timeline that reaches back to the last time the Sahara was green. Then there are sediment-caused cylinders of mud drilled from long-vanished lake beds, each layer a snapshot of the past. As layers build up over time, they trap pollen, dust, even microscopic shells from creatures that thrived in vanished waters. When analyzed, these cores reveal sudden shifts. One layer might be packed with pollen from lush grasses, the next choked with wind-blown sand, a clear marker of when the rain stopped and the desert took hold. At Lake Yoa in Chad, scientists found a sediment core that chronicles the Sahara's drying in heartbreaking detail, with layers of aquatic plants giving way to desert dust in just a few centuries. But perhaps the most surprising clues come from something as tiny as pollen grains. Preserved in mud or fossilized in rock, these microscopic time capsules reveal which plants once flourished where only sand exists today. In the Taibesti Mountains, researchers found pollen from olive trees and fern species that demand steady rainfall. Even more telling is where this pollen appears. Some grains are found hundreds of miles from their source, carried by vanished rivers or ancient winds, mapping waterways and airflow patterns that no longer exist. What makes these proxies so powerful is how they cross-check each other. Tree rings might hint at a dry spell, but pollen samples can confirm which plants struggled, while sediment cores reveal how lakes shrank. Together, they form a mosaic of evidence, painting a picture of the Sahara not as a static wasteland, but as a landscape that's breathed in and out with the rhythms of Earth's climate. And this isn't just about the past. By understanding how these proxies responded to ancient shifts, scientists can fine-tune models predicting future changes. When a sediment core shows how quickly a lake disappeared 5,000 years ago, it's a warning, a preview of what might happen if today's climate tipping points are crossed. The real magic of these natural archives isn't just in the data they provide, but in the questions they force us to ask. If pollen from Mediterranean oaks once blew deep into the Sahara, what other surprises are buried beneath the dunes? If tree rings from Morocco align with monsoon records in India, what global connections might we be missing? Every core drilled, every ring measured, is a piece of a puzzle that stretches far beyond the desert, a reminder that Earth's story is written in mud, wood, and wind, waiting for us to learn its language. The Sahara's transformation from a green oasis to a vast desert didn't just reshape landscapes, it rerouted the very footsteps of humanity. As the once fertile plains withered, the people who called this region home faced a stark choice: adapt or move. Many chose the latter, their migrations setting off a chain reaction that would echo across continents. The Nile Valley became a lifeline, absorbing wave after wave of displaced communities, their arrival transforming the riverbanks into a crucible of innovation. But this wasn't just a story of retreat, it was a catalyst for some of humanity's greatest leaps forward. Take the case of the Nabta Playa people, who thrived near a seasonal lake in what's now southern Egypt. When their waters dried up around 6,000 years ago, they didn't just flee, they carried their knowledge northward. Archaeologists trace their influence in the sudden appearance of cattle burials along the Nile, a ritual that later blossomed into the sacred bull cults of pharaonic Egypt. Even more striking, these migrants brought with them early forms of irrigation, honed in the Sahara's fading wetlands. The techniques they developed to coax crops from marginal lands may have laid the groundwork for the agricultural revolution that fueled Egypt's rise. Meanwhile, on the Sahara's southern edge, another drama unfolded. As the desert expanded, it compressed diverse groups into the Sahel, a narrow band of semi-arid grassland. Here, the collision of cultures sparked a different kind of revolution: trade. With resources scarce, communities began exchanging what they had: salt from the desert for grain from the savannah, copper for livestock. Over time, these networks grew into the trans-Saharan trade routes that would later funnel gold and ivory to Mediterranean empires. The desert didn't just divide, it became a bridge, forcing interactions that might never have happened in a greener world. What's fascinating is how these migrations left their mark on our very DNA. Genetic studies of modern North Africans reveal layers of ancestry, each tied to waves of movement triggered by the Sahara's drying. Some lineages trace back to ancient Saharan pastoralists, while others show ties to groups who crossed the desert in search of water, their genes mixing with every generation. Even lactose tolerance, a trait that spread rapidly among herding cultures, may have gotten its start in the Sahara's grasslands before being carried outward by climate refugees. But the Sahara's influence didn't stop at Africa's borders. Some researchers believe the desert's expansion played a role in pushing early humans out of the continent entirely. As fertile corridors closed, populations may have been funneled toward the Nile Delta and the Red Sea coast, where they could cross into Eurasia. If true, this means the Sahara's drying wasn't just a regional event, it was a pivot point in the human story, steering the course of global migration. The lesson here isn't just about survival, it's about transformation. Faced with an environment in flux, our ancestors didn't just endure change, they harnessed it, turning crisis into creativity. The same pressures that emptied the Sahara seeded new ways of living along its edges, from the birth of agriculture to the rise of trade networks. As we confront our own era of climate shifts, their story offers a provocative question. Will we see our challenges as endings or as chances to reinvent what's possible? The Sahara's sands hold no answers, only proof that even the harshest deserts can't stop the tide of human ingenuity. Today's Sahel region stands at the edge of a familiar precipice, a belt of land stretching across Africa where the Sahara's sands creep southward year after year. Just as the Green Sahara collapsed millennia ago, the Sahel now grapples with droughts that linger longer, rains that arrive unpredictably, and soils that crumble to dust under relentless heat. But this isn't just a replay of ancient history. It's a living laboratory where scientists and communities are racing to apply lessons from the past before it's too late. Take the Great Green Wall, an ambitious project to plant a mosaic of trees and drought-resistant vegetation across the Sahel's width. More than just a barrier against sand, this initiative aims to restore the kind of ecosystem that once thrived in the Green Sahara, where roots stabilize soils, leaves trap moisture, and biodiversity creates resilience. Already, pockets of success emerge. In Senegal, farmers using traditional techniques like zai pits, small planting basins that concentrate water, have revived degraded land, coaxing crops from earth once written off as barren. In Niger, regenerating native trees has boosted groundwater levels, proving that even small interventions can tip the balance, yet the challenges are stark. Modern pressures like population growth and industrial agriculture add layers of complexity that ancient Saharans never faced. Where pastoralists once roamed freely with their herds, fences and property lines now fragment the landscape. Climate change accelerates the very processes that dried the Sahara, compressing into decades what once took centuries. And political instability in the region often sidelines environmental efforts when immediate survival takes priority. Here's where the Green Sahara story becomes urgent. Sediment cores from ancient lakebeds reveal that the desert's spread wasn't always gradual. It could lurch forward in sudden jumps when ecosystems crossed hidden thresholds. The Sahel today flirts with similar tipping points. Satellite data shows some areas losing vegetation cover much faster than models predicted, suggesting feedback loops like dust storms reducing rainfall, which kills more plants, creating more dust. But there's hope in the parallels too. Just as the Sahara's people adapted, shifting from fishing to herding, from settled villages to nomadic life, today's Sahelian communities innovate. Solar-powered irrigation systems bypass erratic rains, while apps using satellite data alert farmers to optimal planting times. Perhaps most crucially, scientists now understand the mechanisms behind desertification in ways our ancestors never could, blending traditional knowledge with cutting-edge tech. The Sahel's struggle isn't just about saving one region, it's a test case for humanity's ability to rewrite an ending. When the Green Sahara vanished, those who survived carried fragments of its knowledge forward, seeding new civilizations along the Nile and beyond. Today, we hold something even more powerful, the foresight to see the crisis coming and the tools to intervene. Whether that's enough to halt the desert's march remains uncertain, but one truth echoes across the millennia. Adaptation isn't just about survival, it's about learning to thrive in the cracks of a changing world. Covering the Sahara with solar panels sounds like science fiction, an endless sea of black mirrors soaking up the sun's energy to power the world. But this isn't just a futuristic dream. It's a serious proposal gaining traction among engineers and climate scientists. The logic is compelling. The desert receives more sunlight in 6 hours than humanity uses in a year. Harnessing even a fraction of that could revolutionize clean energy. Yet beneath the promise lies a thornier question. Could we accidentally repeat the Sahara's ancient ecological upheavals, trading one crisis for another? The scale of potential is staggering. Imagine solar farms spanning thousands of square miles, their panels angled to catch the relentless sun. Projects like Desertification, a multinational initiative, have already mapped out how Saharan solar could supply 15% of Europe's electricity by 2050. The technology exists and the land appears empty, but looks deceive. Those vast dunes are home to resilient ecosystems, from hardy shrubs that stabilize the soil to migratory birds that rely on desert oases. Blanketing the terrain in panels might shade delicate microclimates, altering ground temperatures and wind patterns in ways we don't yet fully understand. Then there's the water paradox. Solar farms need cleaning to maintain efficiency, requiring millions of gallons in a region where every drop is precious. Some designs propose using robotic cleaners or air jets, but these solutions are untested at scale. And while the Sahara's past warns us about tipping points, its present offers another cautionary tale. The Noor solar plant in Morocco, one of the world's largest, has faced challenges with dust storms coating panels, a reminder that the desert has its own rules. Proponents argue that smart design could mitigate risks. Elevated panels might allow plants and animals to thrive underneath, while strategic gaps could preserve migration corridors. Experimental agrivoltaic systems in arid regions already show how solar arrays can coexist with agriculture, their shade reducing evaporation for crops below. But critics counter that the Sahara isn't just another empty lot, it's a global climate regulator. Its reflective surface bounces sunlight back into space, cooling the planet. Covering too much could disrupt this natural thermostat, potentially warming the region further. The debate mirrors a larger tension in our climate solutions: how to intervene without unintended consequences. Ancient Saharans altered their landscape with grazing and fire, unknowingly accelerating the desert spread. Today, we have the tools to foresee impacts, but foresight isn't the same as certainty. Perhaps the answer lies in balance. Instead of a monolithic solar empire, smaller, scattered installations could harness the sun's power while respecting the desert's fragile rhythms. What makes this dilemma so poignant is its irony. The Sahara's transformation from lush paradise to desert was a climate tragedy. Now, we're asking if turning it into an energy utopia might heal or repeat that ancient wound. The sand holds no answers, but it does offer a warning. Every intervention leaves footprints. The question is whether ours will fade with the next storm or shape the next millennium. Peering into the Sahara's future requires more than a crystal ball. It demands supercomputers crunching millennia of climate data. Scientists feed these models with clues from the past: fossilized pollen, ancient shorelines, even the chemistry of stalagmites from Saharan caves. The simulations reveal a startling pattern like clockwork. Every 20,000 years or so, the desert flips between green and arid, driven by the slow wobble of Earth's orbit. Right on schedule, the math suggests another greening phase should begin in about 15,000 years. But here's where the plot thickens. Humans have rewritten the equation. Today's carbon emissions are warming the planet at a pace that dwarfs natural cycles. Some models now show this could trigger unexpected shifts in the Sahara's behavior. One controversial study suggests rising global temperatures might actually amplify the African monsoon, pulling rain further north centuries ahead of the orbital timetable. Satellite data already hints at this. Since the 1980s. Vegetation has crept slightly southward in the Sahel, a possible early signal of change. Yet other simulations warn the opposite, that hotter air could bake soils faster, turning the Sahara into an even harsher desert. The truth might lie somewhere in between, a patchwork of greening and drying, where some regions bloom while others wither. The wild card in these predictions is feedback loops. Take dust, for example. Less Saharan dust in the atmosphere, as seen during past green phases, means more sunlight reaches the ocean, potentially strengthening monsoons. But add industrial pollution or deliberate geoengineering to the mix, and the calculations grow even murkier. Then there's the question of thresholds. Ancient sediment cores show the Sahara can flip states rapidly. What if human activity pushes it past a point of no return? Some theorists even speculate about terraforming the desert intentionally, using vast solar farms to alter wind patterns or planting drought-resistant forests to jumpstart rainfall. What emerges from these models isn't a single future, but a web of possibilities. In one scenario, the Sahara could resemble its former self, a mosaic of grasslands and shallow lakes, teeming with reintroduced wildlife. In another, it might become a hybrid landscape where solar arrays and restored ecosystems coexist. Or if temperatures soar unchecked, the desert could expand further, swallowing more of the Sahel and triggering mass migrations. The only certainty is this: the Sahara of 10,000 years from now won't be shaped by nature alone. Its fate rests on choices we're making today: how swiftly we curb emissions, how wisely we manage land, and whether we heed the lessons etched in its sands. The desert's past whispers a warning. Change isn't just coming, it's already here, unfolding grain by grain. Beneath the Sahara's scorching surface lies a hidden treasure, not gold or oil, but something far more precious: vast reservoirs of ancient water, trapped in rocky layers like a time capsule from the desert's green past. These underground lakes, known as fossil aquifers, were filled thousands of years ago when rain soaked deep into the earth, long before the sands claimed the land. Today, they're lifelines for communities and agriculture across North Africa. But there's a catch: every drop pumped to the surface is a relic of a vanished climate, a finite resource that rainfall can no longer replenish. Take Libya's Great Man-Made River, one of the most ambitious engineering projects on Earth. A network of pipes stretching over 2,000 miles taps into aquifers beneath the desert, delivering water to coastal cities and farms. It's a marvel of human ingenuity, but also a ticking clock. Some estimates suggest these underground reserves could last 50 to 100 years at current usage rates, a blink in geological time. The situation is even more urgent in places like Algeria's Touat region, where ancient Fagara's underground channels built centuries ago are running dry as modern wells drain the aquifers faster than they can naturally recharge. The irony is hard to miss. The same water that sustained the Sahara's lush ecosystems millennia ago is now being used to coax crops from soil that would otherwise be barren. In Egypt's western desert, circular farms bloom like green coins dropped on a tan carpet, their center pivot irrigation systems drawing from wells sunk deep into the Nubian sandstone aquifer. These oases produce everything from olives to alfalfa, but at a cost. Satellite measurements show the ground sinking in some areas as water is extracted, a phenomenon called subsidence that can permanently collapse the very spaces that hold the water. What happens when the taps run dry? The Sahara's own history offers a grim preview. The Garamantes civilization, which thrived in what's now Libya 2,000 years ago, built an empire on fossil water, only to collapse when their wells ran deeper than the water table. Their ruins stand as silent warnings, ghost cities swallowed by the sands they once fought back with irrigation. Today, the stakes are immeasurably higher. Over 90% of Libya's freshwater comes from fossil aquifers, while in Tunisia, groundwater pumping has already caused saltwater to seep into coastal wells, rendering them useless. Yet there are glimmers of hope. New technologies like desalination and wastewater recycling could ease the pressure on these ancient reserves. In Morocco, farmers are reviving traditional rainwater harvesting techniques, capturing rare downpours to recharge aquifers naturally. And some scientists are exploring bolder solutions, like artificially recharging depleted groundwater during wetter years. But these are stopgaps, not long-term fixes. The deeper lesson lies in the Sahara's own story, a reminder that no resource, no matter how vast, lasts forever when pushed beyond its limits. The fossil waters of the Sahara are more than just a resource, they are a mirror. They reflect our own era's uneasy dance with scarcity, where short-term survival too often trumps long-term stewardship. As the desert's past whispers through these dwindling reserves, it asks us a pointed question. Will we be the generation that learned from history, or the one that repeated its mistakes? The answer, like the water itself, is slipping deeper beneath the sands with every passing year. Camels don't just survive the Sahara, they're masterpieces of evolution, fine-tuned for a landscape that kills most life within hours. Their humps aren't water tanks, as old tales claim, but fat reserves that metabolize into energy and water, allowing them to go weeks without food. Their nostrils seal shut against sandstorms, while their broad feet spread their weight like snowshoes to prevent sinking into dunes. Even their blood cells are oval, not round, letting them stay hydrated despite losing a third of their body weight in water, a death sentence for most mammals. But the real marvel isn't just their endurance, it's how they've shaped human history. For centuries, caravans of these ships of the desert carried salt and gold across impossible distances, turning the Sahara from a barrier into a highway of trade and ideas. Yet camels are just the headline act in a symphony of survival. Consider the fennec fox, its oversized ears radiating heat while detecting the faintest scuttles of prey beneath the sand. Or the deathstalker scorpion, whose venom holds clues for treating human brain tumors, proving that even the desert's deadliest residents might harbor unexpected gifts. Then there's the resurrection plant, a humble fern that curls into a brittle ball during drought, only to unfurl emerald green within minutes of rain, a botanical phoenix that's inspired engineers designing drought-resistant crops. The Sahara's flora plays its own high-stakes game. Acacia trees drill taproots over 100 feet deep to reach hidden water, while their thorns and bitter leaves deter thirsty herbivores. The date palm, a cornerstone of desert agriculture, thrives where other plants wither because its pollen remains viable even after 50 years of dormancy, waiting for the perfect conditions to sprout. Even the humble tumbleweed has a Sahara counterpart, the rose of Jericho, which detaches from its roots to roll across the dunes, scattering seeds like a living grenade. What makes these adaptations so urgent to study isn't just their ingenuity, it's their timing. As climate change turns more regions into Sahara-like extremes, scientists are racing to decode these blueprints of resilience. Camels' ability to tolerate dehydration could inform medical treatments for heat stroke. The fennec fox's heat regulation tricks are inspiring energy-efficient building designs. And the secrets of drought-defying plants might hold the key to feeding billions as arable land shrinks. But here's the twist: some species are rewriting the rules in real time. Desert ants navigate using polarized light and step counting, a GPS so precise it's guiding robotics research. Saharan silver ants sprint across scorching sands at midday, their reflective hairs and elongated legs keeping them mere degrees cooler than death, a feat materials scientists mimic for passive cooling fabrics. These aren't just curiosities, they're lifelines for a planet where survival increasingly means doing more with less. The Sahara's survivors offer more than biological marvels, they're mirrors reflecting our own fragility. In a world where humans rely on technology to conquer extremes, these organisms thrive through simplicity, their strategies honed over millennia of trial and error. As we face our own climate crossroads, their lessons whisper a provocative question: will we adapt as elegantly as the camel, or will we, like the lost civilizations buried beneath the dunes, assume our resources are boundless until the sand claims us too? The desert holds no answers, only proof that life, when pushed to the brink, finds a way. To the ancient Egyptians, the Sahara wasn't just a desert, it was the embodiment of chaos itself, a realm they called the Red Land, starkly opposed to the fertile, black land of the Nile. In their mythology, this scorching expanse symbolized the domain of Set, the god of storms and disorder, a place where the sun god Ra battled the serpent Apep each night to prevent the world from plunging into eternal darkness. The desert's dunes were more than just barriers, they were metaphysical frontiers where order met entropy, and where pharaohs sent expeditions to extract gold and glory, as if defying the gods themselves. Yet cross the sands to the Tuareg people, and the Sahara transforms in legend. Their oral traditions whisper of Timbuktu's golden age, of the lost city of Tadmeka, where streets were paved with salt and scholars penned manuscripts under the stars. For these nomadic, blue men of the desert, the Sahara isn't a wasteland, it's a vast library of memory, where every dune holds a story. Take the tale of Tin Hinan, the matriarch who supposedly rode a white camel across the desert to found the Tuareg nation, her tomb still standing in the Hogga Mountains, adorned with ancient inscriptions that defy translation. Even beyond Africa, the Sahara has seeped into global imagination. Medieval Arab geographers wrote of the empty quarter, a place so forbidding it birthed mirages of phantom cities. European explorers like Herodotus spun yarns of sand-dwelling troglodytes and mountains of gold guarded by winged serpents. These weren't just myths, they were psychological maps, ways to explain the unimaginable scale of a land that seemed to swallow time itself. What's striking is how these stories mirror the desert's reality. The Egyptians' chaos metaphor aligns with the Sahara's unpredictability, where sandstorms erase roads in hours and oases vanish like dreams. The Tuareg's reverence for hidden knowledge echoes the archaeological treasures still buried beneath the dunes, from dinosaur fossils to prehistoric rock art. Even the desert's modern reputation as a void reflects our own unease with landscapes we can't dominate, a bias that blinds us to its intricate ecosystems and cultural depth. So what tales will future generations tell? Perhaps of climate refugees crossing a re-greening Sahara, or of solar farms stretching to the horizon like a new industrial mythology. Maybe they'll speak of the desert as a cautionary tale, a reminder that even the mightiest civilizations are fleeting against the march of sand. Or perhaps, like the Tuareg, they'll learn to read the Sahara not as emptiness, but as a living chronicle, where every grain holds a fragment of the past and a whisper of what's to come. The desert's greatest lesson might be this: the stories we tell about the land are never just about the land, they're mirrors of our fears, our hopes, and our place in the unrelenting sweep of time. From hundreds of miles above Earth, satellites capture the Sahara in ways the human eye never could, revealing patterns and movements invisible from the ground. These orbital sentinels track the desert's restless dunes as they crawl across the landscape, some advancing as much as 50 feet a year, swallowing roads and settlements in their path. But it's not just the sand they're watching. The Sahara's most dramatic export isn't gold or oil, it's dust. Every year, billions of tons of fine particles launch into the sky, forming colossal plumes that satellites can trace as they cross oceans, fertilizing the Amazon and even altering weather patterns as far away as the Caribbean. One of the most startling revelations from space is how interconnected these systems truly are. When NASA's Calypso satellite peered through a Saharan dust storm, it discovered something unexpected. The particles weren't just drifting passively. They were seeding clouds, influencing rainfall thousands of miles from their origin. Other missions, like Europe's Sentinel fleet, have mapped ancient river networks buried beneath the dunes using radar that penetrates the sand, rewriting our understanding of where water and perhaps ancient civilizations once flowed. Even more astonishing, infrared sensors have detected subtle temperature shifts in the desert's core, hinting at how underground aquifers might be redistributing heat like a hidden circulatory system. The real power of this orbital perspective lies in its ability to connect dots across time and space. By comparing decades of satellite imagery, scientists have watched the Sahara's edge pulse like a living thing, advancing during droughts, retreating after rare wet years. This bird's eye view reveals patterns invisible to those on the ground, like the way dune fields in Mauritania mirror wind currents that last shifted during the Little Ice Age, or how dust storms in Chad correlate with hurricane intensity in the Atlantic weeks later. It's as if the desert is whispering its secrets to those who know how to listen from space. Future missions promise even deeper insights. The upcoming Earth Care satellite, armed with lasers and spectrometers, will probe how Saharan dust interacts with solar radiation, refining climate models. Meanwhile, private ventures are deploying constellations of tiny CubeSats to monitor desertification in near real time, offering hope for early warnings when farmlands start to dry. Perhaps most intriguing are plans to use gravity-measuring satellites to track hidden water reserves beneath the desert, a modern twist on the ancient practice of dowsing, but with the fate of nations in the balance. What makes these spaceborne observations so transformative isn't just the data, it's the paradigm shift. For centuries, we've seen the Sahara as a static wasteland, but satellites reveal it as a dynamic player in Earth's systems. A dust storm in Algeria can lower temperatures in Miami. A wet year in Sudan might replenish aquifers under Egypt. These connections defy borders and upend assumptions, reminding us that no landscape, no matter how harsh, exists in isolation. The next time you see a satellite image of the Sahara, remember, you're not just looking at a desert, you're seeing a planetary heartbeat pulsing across continents and centuries. The idea of turning the Sahara back into a carbon-absorbing grassland isn't just science fiction, it's a bold proposal gaining traction among climate scientists. Picture this: vast stretches of the desert deliberately transformed into sprawling savannas, their roots locking away carbon while their canopies cool the land beneath. The math is tantalizing. Some models suggest that restoring just a fraction of the Sahara's ancient vegetation could capture billions of tons of carbon dioxide, effectively turning one of Earth's most barren landscapes into a weapon against climate change. But beneath this audacious vision lies a web of complexities where ecological promise collides with unintended consequences. The science hinges on something called the albedo effect, the way surfaces reflect sunlight. Deserts, with their pale sands, bounce solar radiation back into space, while darker vegetation absorbs heat. Regreening the Sahara could theoretically shift this balance, lowering ground temperatures and creating a self-reinforcing cycle where increased plant growth draws moisture into the atmosphere, potentially triggering more rainfall. Projects like Africa's Great Green Wall already demonstrate small-scale success, where drought-resistant trees and shrubs have revived degraded soils in the Sahel. Scaling this up could mimic the natural processes that once kept the Sahara fertile, effectively hacking Earth's climate system to our advantage. Yet the risks are as vast as the desert itself. Tinkering with planetary scale systems rarely yields predictable results. Some simulations warn that large-scale regreening could disrupt global weather patterns, altering monsoon cycles that billions depend on for agriculture. The Sahara's dust, which fertilizes the Amazon and stifles Atlantic hurricanes, might dwindle if vegetation anchors the soil. Then there's the water problem. Even drought-tolerant plants need some moisture, and diverting rivers or drilling deeper into fossil aquifers could spark conflicts over scarce resources. The Sahara's past teaches us that ecosystems can flip states abruptly. What if our interventions trigger a cascade we can't control? Ethical questions loom just as large. Who decides which parts of the desert to transform, and who benefits? Past colonial projects have often treated Africa's landscapes as blank slates for experimentation, with local communities bearing the costs of outside ambitions. Proponents argue that regreening could bring jobs, food security, and energy to some of the world's most vulnerable regions. Critics counter that megaprojects risk repeating history, prioritizing global carbon targets over the sovereignty of those who call the Sahara home. The desert's silence holds no easy answers, only the echo of past civilizations that learned too late the price of overreach. Perhaps the most compelling argument isn't about stopping regreening altogether, but about pacing and humility. Instead of carpeting the Sahara with foreign tree species, scientists explore hybrid approaches, restoring native grasses in strategic corridors, or using solar farms to create shade for natural regeneration. Pilot projects in places like Egypt's Serapeum forest show how wastewater can nourish fast-growing trees without draining aquifers. The lesson from the Sahara's own history is clear. Resilience lies in diversity, not dominance. In the end, the question isn't just whether we can regreen the Sahara, but whether we've learned enough from its past to do it wisely. The desert's dunes are a ledger of Earth's experiments, written in layers of pollen and dust. They remind us that every intervention leaves a mark, and that the boldest solutions often come with hidden receipts. As climate change accelerates, the Sahara's sands may yet hold one final paradox. The key to saving our future might lie buried in the ruins of its past. The Sahara's dramatic shifts between lush paradise and barren wasteland don't just rewrite Earth's history, they might hold the blueprint for humanity's next giant leap. Scientists studying Mars terraforming have stumbled upon an unexpected parallel. If natural forces could flip the Sahara from green to desert, could we reverse engineer that process to turn the red planet's rusty plains into habitable land? The comparison isn't as far-fetched as it sounds. Both landscapes share a chilling similarity, their case studies in how delicate the balance between life and lifelessness can be, and how small nudges might tip that balance in our favor. Consider the numbers. Mars today receives about half the sunlight Earth does, with average temperatures around -60 degrees Celsius. But 4 billion years ago, it likely had rivers, lakes, and maybe even oceans. A green Mars, not unlike the Sahara's forgotten grasslands. The parallels go deeper. Just as Earth's orbital wobbles dried the Sahara, Mars lost its water when its magnetic field weakened, allowing solar winds to strip away its atmosphere. Here's where the Sahara's story gets provocative. If nature could transform a thriving ecosystem into a desert through gradual climate shifts, could we hijack similar processes to run in reverse on Mars? The strategies echo eerily across planets. On Earth, regreening the Sahara would involve jump-starting rainfall by altering surface reflectivity, perhaps with dark-colored plants or solar absorbers to warm the air and pull in moist winds. On Mars, proposed terraforming mirrors this logic, darkening the polar ice caps with dust or algae to melt frozen carbon dioxide, thickening the atmosphere to trap heat. Both plans rely on triggering feedback loops where small changes snowball into larger effects. The Sahara proves such loops exist. Its ancient pollen records show vegetation once stabilized its own rainfall until drought crossed a tipping point. Mars offers its own potential feedback. Warming could release subsurface water, creating clouds that further insulate the planet. Yet the Sahara also serves as a cautionary tale. Its transformation wasn't just about adding water. It involved intricate dance between atmosphere, soil, and biology, factors we're still unraveling. When researchers simulate Sahara like greening on Mars in labs, they hit snags. Martian soil contains perchlorates, toxic salts that would need neutralization before plants could grow. The planet's lack of a magnetic field leaves any new atmosphere vulnerable to erosion, unlike Earth's protected skies. And while the Sahara's changes unfolded over millennia, Mars would require staggering energy inputs to mimic even a fraction of that shift within human timescales. The desert's past whispers a hard truth. Ecosystems aren't machines with an on/off switch, their networks of fragile dependencies. The most compelling argument might lie in what the Sahara doesn't tell us. Earth's climate had a head start, a ready-made nitrogen-oxygen atmosphere, a functioning water cycle. Mars starts from near zero, making its transformation less like reviving a dormant system and more like building one from scratch. Yet here, too, the Sahara offers unexpected hope. Its fossil aquifers prove water can persist underground for epochs in hostile environments. Its extremophile organisms, bacteria, thriving in hyper-arid conditions, a hint at life's tenacity. If microbes can survive in the Sahara's sun-baked rocks, might they pioneer Martian soils? Experiments aboard the International Space Station already test this, exposing Sahara-like lichens to Mars-like conditions with surprising success. What makes the Sahara-Mars connection so electrifying isn't just the science, it's the philosophy. Both landscapes force us to confront our role as planetary stewards. The Sahara's ruins remind us that civilizations fall when they misunderstand their environment. Mars represents the flip side, a chance to apply those lessons proactively, to shape a world with humility rather than hubris. As we debate flooding Martian valleys with engineered microbes or orbiting giant mirrors to melt ice caps, the Sahara's dunes stand as both warning and inspiration. They prove that planets can wear multiple faces across time, and that the line between wasteland and oasis might be thinner and stranger than we ever dreamed. Tourism in the Sahara is a double-edged sword, a chance to witness one of Earth's last great wildernesses, yet an industry that risks loving the desert to death. Every year, thousands of visitors arrive to trek across dunes the color of burnt honey, to sleep under stars so bright they cast shadows, and to stand in silence where the horizon stretches uninterrupted for miles. But footprints in the sand linger longer than you'd think. Off-road vehicles scar ancient geological formations, campgrounds drain precious water reserves, and the trash left behind in remote oases can take centuries to decompose in the dry air. The very things that make the Sahara magical, its emptiness, its silence, its raw, untamed scale, are what make it vulnerable to the weight of human presence. The challenge isn't just about limiting visitors. It's about reimagining how we experience deserts altogether. In Morocco's Merzouga region, some tour operators now replace gas-guzzling 4x4 with electric buggies that whisper across the dunes, their solar-charged batteries leaving no exhaust in the thin air. Nearby, luxury camps like those in Erg Chebi have swapped disposable plastics for biodegradable alternatives, while employing local Berber communities as guides, ensuring tourism dollars stay in the region. Even small choices matter. The traditional camel caravans that once carried salt across the desert now ferry tourists, but with a twist. Handlers rotate resting periods for the animals and monitor their health with the same care their ancestors reserved for prized livestock. Yet sustainability isn't just about reducing harm, it's about amplifying good. In Algeria's Tassili en Naja, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, rock art tours are led by Tuareg elders who weave ancestral stories into every painting, turning a sightseeing trip into a living history lesson. These guides don't just protect the art from vandalism, they safeguard the intangible heritage behind it. Similarly, in Tunisia's Chott El Djerid, scientists collaborate with tour groups to collect data on rare desert birds, turning binoculars into research tools. When visitors become citizen scientists, their presence actively contributes to conservation rather than detracting from it. The Sahara's future as a destination hinges on recognizing its fragility as part of its allure. In Namibia's Namib Desert, a landscape eerily similar to the Sahara, high-end lodges operate on a "leave no trace" philosophy, where structures are designed to disassemble without a footprint, and every drop of water is recycled. It's a model that could work in the Sahara's hyper-arid core, where even biodegradable waste decomposes at a glacial pace. Meanwhile, virtual reality startups are experimenting with dry tourism, offering immersive Saharan experiences from classrooms in Tokyo or Berlin, reducing physical traffic while sparking global appreciation. What makes the Sahara worth preserving isn't just its geology or ecology, it's the way it reshapes those who encounter it. The silence that presses against your eardrums, the way dawn turns the dunes from blue to gold, the humility that comes from standing in a place that dwarfs human timelines. Sustainable tourism isn't about locking the desert away, it's about ensuring that generations after us can still feel that same awe. The Sahara has survived empires and ice ages, but the mark we leave on it now will echo longer than we might think. The choice isn't between visiting or not visiting, it's between passing through like a sandstorm or treading as lightly as a shadow at noon. The Sahara's shifting sands hold more than just geological secrets, they carry a profound message about resilience and adaptation. This vast desert, once a thriving ecosystem teeming with life, stands as a testament to Earth's incredible capacity for transformation. But its story isn't merely about ancient climate change, it's a mirror reflecting our own relationship with the planet. Like the civilizations that rose and fell with the Sahara's changing landscapes, we too must navigate the delicate balance between human ambition and environmental limits. Consider how quickly the Sahara's lush lakes became dust not over millennia but within generations. This rapid transformation parallels our current climate crisis, where rising temperatures and shifting weather patterns threaten to redraw the world map. The difference: we have something our ancestors lacked, the knowledge to understand these changes before they overwhelm us. Satellite imagery reveals the desert's expansion in real time, while sediment cores from ancient lakebeds provide hard evidence of past tipping points. This combination of cutting-edge science and ancient history gives us an unprecedented advantage if we choose to use it, yet awareness alone isn't enough. The Sahara's past civilizations teach us that adaptation requires more than survival instincts, it demands innovation. The Garamantes didn't just endure their drying world, they engineered underground waterways to sustain their cities. The nomadic Tuareg transformed trade routes into cultural lifelines, turning scarcity into opportunity. These aren't just historical footnotes, they're blueprints for creative problem solving in an era of climate uncertainty. What makes the Sahara story so urgent today is its universality. From California's wildfires to Bangladesh's rising waters, we're all living in modern versions of that ancient transition, where familiar landscapes morph into something new and unpredictable. The difference this time is scale. Where the Sahara's changes were regional, ours are global. Where their transformations unfolded over centuries, ours accelerate with each passing decade. But here's the hopeful twist. The same interconnectedness that spreads climate risks also multiply solutions. Solar farms in the Sahara could power cities across Europe and Africa. Drought-resistant crops developed from desert plants might feed millions. Even the Sahara's dust, once seen as a nuisance, is now recognized as a vital fertilizer for distant ecosystems. Every challenge contains hidden opportunities if we're willing to look. The greatest lesson from the Sahara isn't about loss, it's about perspective. This desert we see as barren was once fertile and may be again. Its transformations remind us that no environment is permanent and no crisis is insurmountable. What changes is our ability to read the signs, to adapt with wisdom, and to leave markers for those who will follow, just as cave painters did millennia ago, leaving their stories on stone for us to discover. As the search for the Sahara's secrets continues, one truth becomes clear. Understanding this desert isn't just about uncovering the past, it's about decoding the future. Every grain of sand holds clues to Earth's rhythms, and every discovery reshapes our place within them. The journey doesn't end here, it evolves just like the land itself. And that's perhaps the most important lesson of all. Change isn't the exception, but the rule. Our task isn't to resist it, but to navigate it with curiosity, courage, and care. New revelations await beneath the dunes. Subscribe now to be part of the next chapter in this unfolding story. Together, we'll keep exploring how Earth's greatest desert continues to reshape our understanding of the planet and ourselves. If this journey through the Sahara's shifting sands has sparked your curiosity, why not take the adventure further? Smash that like button if you were amazed by how a land of lakes became a sea of dunes. It helps others discover these hidden chapters of Earth's story. Share this video with anyone who loves unraveling mysteries, whether they're obsessed with ancient cave paintings, climate science, or the mind-bending idea of turning deserts green again. Now we want to hear your take. Scroll down and tell us in the comments, what blew your mind the most? Was it the lost megacities buried beneath the dust, the way camels evolved to conquer this brutal landscape, or the bold plans to harness the Sahara's sun for clean energy? Your thoughts fuel this channel's next deep dive, and if you're not already part of our exploration squad, hit subscribe and tap the bell. We're constantly unearthing new wonders, from vanished civilizations to cutting-edge science that reshapes how we see our planet. The Sahara's story is just one thread in a much bigger tapestry. Next time, we might decode the secrets of Antarctica's frozen forests or dive into the ocean's darkest trenches. Before you go, a challenge. Look up at the sky next time you hear about a Saharan dust storm crossing the Atlantic. Those tiny particles connect continents, just like the threads of history we've uncovered today. Thanks for watching, fellow time travelers. The past isn't just behind us, it's beneath our feet, waiting to be rediscovered. See you in the next